Hi everybody. This vehicle is a 2008 Honda Fit, and today I'm working on the alternator. So what happened was the owner was driving the car down the interstate highway, and all of a sudden the engine shut off, so they had to pull it off on the side of the road. They had it towed here to the shop, and then I found out that the alternator is just completely loose. And of course when the engine runs, then you have really not a lot of tension on the belt, so the water pump's not turning, and of course the idler pulleys are not turning either. And then of course the alternator is not turning, so you're not getting any charge back to the battery, so I think that's why it shut off. But anyway, I did some looking around all the way down on the bottom of the frame, way down, see if I get this to focus, way down there, and I found this broken bolt. And this thing just snapped right off about halfway down the threads. So since the alternator is loose, and I found that piece of bolt, it looks like the tightening bolt that goes up here on the top, it looks like that's what broke. So basically, on the alternator, you've got three different bolts. You've got a pivot bolt that's down, it's down here on the bottom, so that's what the alternator is pivoting on, that bolt. And then up here on this top ear, you've got the lockdown bolt that actually holds it in place once you put tension on the belt. And then this threaded bolt right here is what puts tension on the belt. So basically you've got a pivot, and then you tighten this bolt, which has a little adjuster strap that holds on to this top lockdown bolt. So when you tighten this thread, it puts tension on this, tension on the belt. Once you get it tight, then you lock it down with this bolt here. And of course that broke. So the way I'm looking at it, the alternator doesn't look too old. This battery has a sticker on it. Let's see what this says. That looks about 3, maybe, of 21. So it's only a year old because it's March of 22 now. So 1-year-old battery, looks like a relatively new alternator. So I think whoever did this over tightened that bolt and it snapped. And then also, it's going to be a little bit hard to show you here, but if we look in the back of the ear, so if you can, it's really, you're probably not going to be able to see it in the camera, but back in here, the rest of that bolt, that stud, is broken off in there. So I don't really have much of a choice. In order to get that broken stud out, I'm going to have to pull this alternator out of the car. And to do that, according to the Honda instructions, which I've got right here, now let's see here, removal and replacement for the alternator. So you need the code, disconnect the battery, remove the drive belt, and number 4, remove the intake manifold. So I've got to pull all this intake off, and I'm guessing probably this EGR also, so that this alternator can come out, because there is just no room. It's way too tight to get it out without removing the intake, and it's definitely not going to go out from the bottom because there's an AC compressor in the way. And I think the only other option would be I'd have to disconnect this upper alternator bracket and then remove this ABS pump and maybe the AC line, and it's just not worth it. So it doesn't look too bad. Here's the schematic or the exploded diagram view of the intake. It's basically just these bolts right here. So what's that? It's about 6 bolts plus the EGR, and then maybe disconnecting the air intake box. But anyway, it calls for 1.8 hours total R&R time. So not terrible, but definitely not going to be fun. So let's get started.